Hello, and welcome to the OASIS Code Setup and Training video. My name is Ollie Leek, and I'm going to be walking you through how to set up, install, navigate, and run your OASIS R code. So to begin, we have three main requirements. The first is RStudio must be installed on your computer. The second is you will need to download the OASIS code zip file from oasisstewardship.org, and you will need Epic Clarity Access. Epic Clarity Access is a little bit different from front-end Epic Access. This means that you will be able to use SQL code to access data on the back end and pull it in for the OASIS project. So to begin, I'm going to hop out of this presentation and get to my desktop. So I've already downloaded my OASIS zip file. It lives right here. To open this file in any zip file, you'll just go ahead and double click. This will pop open the zip, and we'll double click again to get in, and we see that we have two items in this folder. The first is a folder for all the code that we have. The second is a data dictionary for the OASIS project. If you double click the data dictionary, this will open, and I refer to this document as your best friend for getting this code set up. So we provide an overview of how the code works, how you should set up the code, different packages that are required, automation instructions if your institution is interested in setting it up to run automatically, and a bunch of other things, including how the data mapping from Epic works, as well as variable names and how they should appear within your code. So what we're going to do first is we're actually going to set up a OASIS project folder. Now this folder, depending on where you and your team do most of your work, could be saved to a T drive or an H drive or a C drive, which in my case is where I'm going to be saving mine, and I'm going to save it directly to my desktop. So I'll go to my desktop, click, right click and select new and then folder, and I'm going to name this OASIS project documents and code. And you can definitely name this however works best for you and your team. Then I'm going to select both of these files and move them over to this file folder. And once those are transferred, I'm just going to click out of this zip. The zip file is no longer needed. You're welcome to keep it or throw it in the trash, and you can always re-download it from the oasisstewardship.org web address. So now I'm going to double click to open this folder, and now I'm going to go into the actual code. So in here we have a couple of items. The first is the OASIS code RMD. You should also have the OASIS logo and OASIS report. If you're missing this .r history, that's okay. This will automatically load when you first open the code, and this just tells R everything that's been going on behind the scenes. So I'm going to double click the OASIS code RMD to open it up, and this will, and the code itself is going to appear in this upper left-hand corner. I'm just going to click remind later. This will probably ask you if you want to update, always does, but I'm not going to do that right now. So here's my beautiful OASIS code. The next thing we're going to do is just switch back into this code folder, and we're going to open the OASIS report as well. And so these two documents do a lot of communicating with each other. This code creates and generates the reports, or creates and generates the graphs for the reports, and then this actually generates the reports with the graphs in them. And so now that we're in here, the first thing that we're going to want to do is set our working directory. So first, what you'll want to do is check your current working directory by going into the command prompt and typing get wd, open parentheses, close parentheses, enter. And so this will tell me exactly where everything's living. It's on my C drive, then under my username on my desktop. And then in my OASIS projects and documents and code, and then within the code folder. If this address is not where you want your folder or files to be saved, you'll go ahead and use setwd, and then use open and closing quotation marks, and then you'll simply type in the web address or the file address of where you want your working directory to be. Now, this is highly imperative that wherever your working directory is, that these three files, the RMD, the OASIS logo, and the OASIS report, are all together. If they're not together, it will throw errors, especially with the logo, because we do end up calling that in the report a couple of times. So we just want to make sure that it's where we tell R it's going to be. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to check our R version. So if we hop into this wonderful data dictionary, under the OASIS code setup section, we see that the following code has been built in RStudio 4.1.3. And so to check to make sure we're on the right version, you're just going to go down to your console in the lower left-hand corner and just see or confirm that these numbers right here match. So R 4.1.3, this is correct, and so we're good to move on. The next thing that we're going to take a look at are our packages. And so all the packages that we use are mentioned right here. And so we're going to make sure we have them. So to do that, you're going to go to this bottom right-hand corner window, and you're just going to start typing in package names. So SQL DF is my first one, not DQL DF, SQL DF. And so for me, it shows up here. It gives me the name and the description, and most importantly, it tells me the version of my SQL DF. So I'm going to check it's 0.4-11. So if I go into my data dictionary, I see that it was built with 0.4-11, so that's correct. So you're going to go through all of your packages and make sure you have the correct version. If for some reason you type in a package here and you don't have it, i.e. it doesn't show up in this little window, you're going to click this install icon. And what you'll do is you'll type in the package you want, SQL DF, and go ahead and click install. This process is also very similar or exactly the same for updating packages. So if I just want the newest version of SQL DF, I can hit install and it will give me the current version or the most recent version that has been published. So I'm not going to click that because I already have this package installed. But there is your crash course on installing packages. Now, I do want to have a little side note. This last package here, RDCOM client, I had quite a bit of trouble installing. And so when you try to install it, if it throws an error, I would recommend using this below chunk right here to install it another way. And so what you'll do is make sure DevTools is installed. You'll run this library command on it. And then within the DevTools package, there's something called install_GitHub, which allows us to extract code directly from GitHub for whichever package we need. So in this case, we're just going to extract the RDCOM client package information. So now that we have our packages installed, we're going to get this code running. So just a quick note on how R works. So you can have something called R files, but you can also have something called RMD files, which stands for R Markdown files. I personally really like RMD files because it allows you to execute code in chunks. A chunk is this gray, light gray text area that starts with these, not apostrophes, but tildes or something like that. And ends with them, and you'll know it's a chunk because it has this little play button. So if I hit play here, it goes green, it runs, and I'm good to go. So we're going to go through and hit run on all of these chunks. Chunks are super nice because if there is something that goes wrong in your code, you can isolate it to these lines of code specifically. And so let's say you run this chunk and it does throw an error, then you'll be able to isolate like, oh, this package isn't installed, so I have to install it before I can run the library command. So I'll go ahead and hit play on here. It's going to go through all of my packages, make sure I have them, and load them up so that my code can access them quickly in the following segments. A quick little note here, although this may look bad, this is okay. It's just telling you that you have some dependencies. So some packages require other packages to work properly. So it's just loading these extra ones that I did not mention up here. But not to be worried or anything. This is totally okay. If an error does happen, it'll look a lot different. You'll get a lot more text down here in your console window. And if that happens, it's most likely because one of these packages is not installed. So I'll go ahead and click out of there. We're good to go. I'm going to skip this line of code because I have my RDA.com client installed already. The next chunk is our SQL Clarity poll, and because we're referencing DHHA's server specifically, I'm not going to show you what's going on there. Each institution's code will be unique in how you connect to your Clarity server, but the data that you pull from the Clarity servers should remain the same. So the next chunk of code that we're going to be looking at is for the Epic SQL code. Now, for PHI and server-related purposes, we're not going to show you what this code looks like specifically, and this code will change from institution to institution, depending on the different credentials you need to access your Epic server. So we have this dandy little R code chunk right here, which tells you to insert your Epic SQL code here. And as you can see from that little slide introducing this section, all of this information is accessible via Epic World. And so you have to follow the link on our website to get to the SQL code. Then you'll simply copy over the SQL code and paste it in this chunk right here. The directions for how to insert the SQL code into our R code is also included in Epic World for OASIS. And it's important to note that only Epic users will have access to this code because it is proprietary. So data in, as we see, has 61 observations of 13 variables. What you're really going to want to focus on are these 13 variables right here. If you don't have the specific 13 variables outlined in the SQL data clarity poll, this code will not run. So you're going to want to make sure you have 13 variables here. The number of observations is going to vary from institution to institution depending on the number of providers and the number of providers that meet that specific criteria. This is the example data in table. And as we can see, I filled this in with fake information, but we still have the 13 variables that are specified in the Epic SQL Clarity code data poll. Woo! So we have the encounter type title, we have our CSN, medication ID, age at time at visit, date of service, ranking, authorizing provider, authoring provider type, authorizing, encounter department, authorizing provider email, the name of the prescription being prescribed, the generic name, and then SIG, which is basically the instructions for how long the antibiotic should be taken for and how much should be taken each time. And so we can see that we have 5 records in here for John Smith, Dr. John Smith, and Dr. Jane Doe. And some important things to note are the CSN should be 10 digits. Your medication ID should be 8 digits long. and you should only have these 13 variables once you pull your data. And this example table can be accessed via the initial file, the initial zip file that you download. So next, I'm going to move on to this variable cleanup and creation modification chunk. I'll go ahead and hit play on this. It's going to create some more data tables within my environment, and it ran without any errors, so I know my code is okay. This is just a little notification letting us know that we can override groups, but we don't need to in this case. So it is not an error. Don't be concerned. You should expect a little bit of output. That's just our telling you what's going on. Perfect. So we'll go ahead and move on. This next chunk just creates a function. So when you hit play on it, it's not going to create any output. And this is just a great way to clean up code. So we're going to call this function in this next chunk, which serves as our main chunk that actually goes through all your providers, creates graphs for the reports, and then creates reports, and then finally uses this function we created up here to send the content to your providers. So I'm not going to hit play on this because we've already sent out our reports this month, and I would make a lot of physicians mad. So definitely, when you hit play on this chunk, know that it's going to reach out to all of your providers. For us at Denver Health, this took approximately 15 minutes to run and get through all our providers and send those reports out. So I would expect similar times for your institutions. Do not worry if it takes longer than you might expect it to. So there you go. This was your crash course and training video on the OASIS code setup. The next section that we're going to look at are some frequently asked questions on the OASIS code. So the first question we get, and one of the most reoccurring questions we get, is regarding automation. So the OASIS code and R are able to be automated, and to do that, you'll just follow these simple directions that are in our data dictionary. However, for Denver Health and for many other institutions, because we have firewalls and different ways of protecting our client and patient information, you will need the assistance from your institution's IT team to set this up. So at Denver Health, it was a lot of work to set this up through our IT team to get our code to run automatically, and so we ended up just sending our reports by manually clicking play on our code each month that we wanted to send out reports. So we also have this highlighted here on the ways that you manually run your OASIS code. Next, we get a lot of questions about how different institutions can revise the specific wording in the OASIS reports that are generated and sent out to physicians. So in order to modify the code, I'll click into the OASIS report RMD. And here we can see that a lot of the information in this file is text, and that we only have a couple of code chunks that actually call the plots that we generate in the main OASIS code RMD file. And so if you're interested in changing the text, you simply click anywhere that's dark gray. This might depend on the theme that you're using, but anywhere that's not in these code chunks. And then let's say if I wanted to add a little line here, I would just indent or create a new line and then type what I want here. So this is my new text. And then when I run my code and these reports are generated, this text will appear here. So it's very simple, and it's an easy way to modify anything that you need in this report. I highly recommend not adding any text into the code itself. This will cause errors to be thrown.